It's time for Silver Linings with Greg Neal, physical gold and silver expert and wholesale supplier, answering your questions about how and where to store your hard-earned money with a rational sense of peace in troubled times.
And here we are. We're back again, and I'm really excited to be here today. This is Greg from the Gold Ore Store in historic St. George, Utah. 435-703-9119 is our number. And just wanted to get you guys to know that things are still going downhill as far as our economy. Nothing's really changing that way, except it's just getting worse. And many issues in the forefront right now. Basically, we're going to talk about how the central banks are manipulating the markets. Will the central banks monetize everything and usher in total socialism? Many people would argue right now that we're actually in some state of socialism as we speak. This and a whole lot more is what we're going to be discussing today. So if you'd like to weigh in and share your thoughts or have anything you'd like to ask me, the lines are open, and you can give me a call at 435-673-1450. That's 435-673-1450. An author named Mark Faber is an investment advisor and publisher of the Gloom, Boom, and Doom Report, usually emphasizes risk in financial systems and never minces his words. And the Epic Times spoke to Faber about the central bank manipulation of financial markets and the reasons for income inequality and how to invest in this environment. In the last week, we talked about how Federal Reserve banks target groups of people, large groups, victimizes them, and pads the pockets of the wealthy and the wealthiest. So how long can the central banks continue to manipulate the markets? Mark Faber says, and he quotes, "This is an issue that will be decided by the central bankers. I don't have control over manipulation of central banks." Haruhiko Kuroda of the Bank of Japan, the BOJ, expressed the view that there is no limit to monetary inflation. They can keep buying assets and they can keep on buying equities and real estate. Mark Faber continues to explain that central banks, could essentially monetize everything, and then you have state ownership. And through central banking systems, you introduce socialism and communism, which is state ownership of production, in other words, creation of items, and the actual consumption or buying of those same items. And they can and do this all the time, all over the world. And, of course, we're basically there right now. So are you hearing this out there, folks? Are you hearing what I'm saying right now? We're basically dealing with a fascist government that we live under in the United States. Does this bother you? It should infuriate you. I'm curious to hear your views today, so please call in. We'd love to have a discussion about this. Did you know that the Bank of Japan owns more than 50% of the Japanese ETFs, or exchange-traded funds? They own a large part of the underlying companies that are there in Japan. So indirectly, they own 20% of the Japanese companies, and that means that they'll even go up higher or could go up higher as far as their ownership in these companies. So there you have a government that actually has ownership in actual companies, privately held companies. As far as I know, that's considered fascism anywhere else in the world. Central banks have run amok, and we've allowed it. Their policy changes are affecting all of us, and Mr. Faber doesn't think they are intelligent or smart enough to understand the consequences of their monetary policies at the present. If we take a look at what's going on abroad, we can get a better feeling of what we can expect here in the States. The ripple effect of these actions taken are slower to be felt here in the U.S., but they are coming. We live in a bubble here. We as a people seem to only care about what's going on in our little world and our own little families. The policies are similar, but the results take longer to be felt. For example, have you noticed what's going on in Venezuela and Zimbabwe? Folks may not be aware of this, but Zimbabwe is in utter distress, and Venezuela is a wreck, just a complete wreck. It's costing enormous amounts of money even just to buy a dozen eggs in Venezuela. I heard the other day it was about $150 U.S. as far as their deflationary economy is concerned. I've also heard some rumors about one ounce of silver actually paying for 6 months of living for a person in Venezuela. So there's just terrible things occurring all over the world, and it's all based on centralized banking. These bankers are criminals, and what they've done to these societies is absolutely criminal. There is no other word for it. We've been covering all these guys up for so long. You know, bankers don't go to jail, folks. People go to jail for, you know, whatever it is, small infractions, you know, don't even add up to what these guys are involved in and how much damage they've done to the world as a whole. This is something we need to be taking a closer look at. We need to be actually realizing that our economics and our world are a mess. And we need to do something about it, and we need to do something quick. Our dollar to silver ratio right now, and I get this information from the usdebtclock.org. You can go there anytime. The dollar to silver ratio is $945.50 per ounce. Yes, you heard that correct. Dollar to silver ratio, $945.50 per ounce. Gold. And these both keep going up. Every single week we bring in these numbers, they keep going up. Dollar to gold ratio right now, $8,568. Yes, you heard that correct. $8,568. Now, how could this be, you ask? Well, you're dealing with a dollar that is not worth anywhere near what they're proposing it to be right now, which is somewhere in the range of around 95, 96 cents. If the dollar was actually truly worth that much, then how come we're dealing with such inflationary prices? When you go to the grocery store, how much are you getting out, you know, of that store for $100, $200, $300 now? You know, it's something to take a look at, and it's affecting us. We may not even be realizing it. Every single day, we're feeling the effects of our economy on us. So, you know, these other countries like Zimbabwe that I was talking about and Venezuela, they continue to print money. But the problem is the money, the amount or the message on the paper has to completely change. So it keeps going up and up. And Zimbabwe, of course, many of you may be aware that they printed the largest denominated note ever printed by man. That is $100 trillion in Zimbabwe money. Yes, I said $100 trillion. So if that was like really legitimate, it could simply pay off the $200+ trillion in debt that the U.S. government's actually in with all the unfunded liabilities. You know, it's really something to take a look at, isn't it? And you wonder why I discuss this kind of thing all the time. It's really because of the true values of the precious metals that we have. I have a caller. Let's hear from our caller. Yes, go ahead, caller.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, and this is a genuine question. I'm not trying to be snarky at all, okay?
Go right ahead.
I've heard similar things like this. My question is, let's say things like banking fails here in America, right?
Banking,
kind of scenario.
Banking
and
what?
I have gold or silver, but who am I going to trade with? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I'm just thinking a real scenario.
Yeah, of course. And right now it isn't set up that way. And I get this, you know, from a lot of folks that call in or even come to the store. They're asking,
right.
You know, this is $1. Well, yeah, you and I agree right now that that's actually $1.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is it's actually a debt note. And see, every time you and I transact an action, any kind of purchase and you know, any kind of action there that occurs where I say, okay, I'll give you $1 for that, you accept that $1, we're actually creating more debt.
Right. And I heard you on that. That makes sense to me, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
You know, the Constitution and the gold standard, thanks to Nixon getting us off that in the 70s. Mm-hmm. But my question is, though, say things fail, then the dollar fails and everything, but say I have a bunch of gold I bought and silver.
Yes.
But how am I going to use that?
Well, and that's the great
things I need.
Yeah, that's the great question of the decade or the century, for that matter, because more and more people are actually asking this very same question. And really, it's going to come down to the bare bones necessities of life are going to have to be. We're going to have to make some. Possibly, we're going to be in a situation where we're doing bartering. in a sense.
Right, and trading. And things,
yeah,
right.
at least for a little while. And that's all conjecture as well, too, because we don't know exactly how this whole thing is going to go down. We just know it's going to go down. We know it has to go down.
Okay, no, thank you. And so my next question would be, how do I call my representatives, senators, governors, whatever, to say, I mean, is it worth calling them and saying, hey, we want to work towards the gold standard again?
Yeah.
How do we do, you know what I mean?
Boy,
Bring us
great.
back into reality of money, not fake stuff, you know?
I love that question, because the more that, you folks out there discuss this with our, representatives of our government, maybe we can actually get something moving forward. I know, of course, Ron Paul for years as a congressman discussed this kind of thing constantly.
I love that.
Yeah, and Rand, his son, has done the same kind of things. There's a few others. The state of Utah actually legislated that gold and silver can be used in transactions. And so you and I can agree to something, and we can use gold and silver in that transaction, and it's legislated by a bill. The problem with the bill is the fact that I can't bring like a bag of gold to the state tax commission and pay my taxes. They didn't actually create the bill decent enough, and they really didn't factor in all the aspects to the state itself actually accepting and acknowledging this same transactional ability with the state.
Right, that's what's crazy. Yeah. So in other words, I'm just checking with you because I trust you as an expert in this area. I go in, that's illegal for me to use gold.
Yeah,
right? Right now, the way it is, the way our government's set up so backwards that I could have gold and silver, real worth, right? Things of real worth.
Yes.
And that's illegal, right? To go in and pay.
Well, it's not necessarily legal. They're just not going to accept it, at this point. And it really comes down to the logistics of actually how do you train hundreds of state employees to handle the non-free market of the gold and silver industry? It's this is going to be a process, if we're going to go there.
Your show, like I said, I appreciate opportunity to ask, and thank you. I'll keep listening. Have a good day.
Thank you. Appreciate your call. Yes, caller, go ahead.
A couple of things. Number one, there is a way that you can spend gold and silver very, very easily at any place that accepts legal tender currency of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The state of Texas has set up a depository.
Yes, it is.
You can send your gold and silver down to them, and they will issue a debit card. And on the day that you transact a purchase anywhere, they'll take the amount of gold or silver out of your account for the amount of the purchase and apply it on your account so that your purchase goes through. So it's just as easy to purchase with gold and silver for anything that you can spend dollars on.
Fabulous.
As it is to actually spend the dollar currency.
Yeah, fabulous. I've been a
point that I wanted to make was that if you were in Venezuela, Argentina, Zimbabwe, or Weimar Germany, I'll promise you that anybody that you offered a gold or silver coin to would take that in a heartbeat over the devaluing currency that was there at the time.
Yeah,
without the slightest hesitation.
And that
they were thrilled to get real value currency.
Yeah, thank you, dear.
I have to take the intangible. The
fiat
currency.
Yeah, the fiat currency. Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's just proof in the pudding that really gold and silver are money, and they have always been money. It's never changed. It will always be the case. It doesn't matter what our fake, fraudulent market, the COMEX out of Chicago, Illinois, creates as far. In fact, actually, those numbers in gold and silver that we are showing today are absolutely a gift to you folks out there. You have no idea. Complaining about paying $1 or $2 over or $3 or whatever it is right now needs to stop. Because the true value of silver and gold, when they actually hit...
I have a hypothetical question that I would like to ask you, if you wouldn't mind...
Go right ahead, man.
Giving me your opinion.
Sure, please go ahead.
Let's hypothetically assume that somebody came up with a method of mining that allowed them to extract gold or silver in unlimited quantities.
Yes.
So that there was no limit on the amount that they could produce.
Mm-hmm.
How would you go about using that resource to change the political and financial structure of the country so that we weren't facing the problems that we currently face?
Well, basically what you're referring to is even right now we're preparing to go back to a gold standard. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we are planning on going back to a gold standard. And the way that it works is basically there's X amount of currency in force out there on deposit. And this amount of currency also is balanced out with the amount of actual gold that is mined and refined and ready to disperse. And that variance or that balancing act is basically why the values of gold and silver will actually fantastically increase, because all of a sudden you have a true backed currency.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm asking is that process will leave the same international bankers and politicians in control, and we'll be facing at least as bad or worse problems after they have control of us than we were before. What I'm trying to say is that let's suppose that a private party, an ordinary person, citizen, ended up with an unlimited quantity, say 100 million tons of silver.
Mm-hmm.
How could that silver be used in order to reverse the control of the international bankers and the federal government, so that the citizens are left free?
Yeah, it's got to be dispersed to the people, and
how could you do that, though?
Well, I'm not.
Are you going to give it away? How would you get it out there? Because one of the problems is that if you have a huge amount of silver, as soon as you start dispersing it or selling it into the market, guess what? The price is going to drop to zero.
It will never drop to zero, dear. It just won't. Because
if you have 100 million tons,
it doesn't matter.
It won't be worth much.
Well, you would never find 100 million tons of silver. I can tell you that for the first off, because silver is more rare than gold.
There are ore bodies out there. They may not be high grade, but there are ore bodies out there where there is 100 million tons in a single ore body.
Yeah.
That's a question of how do you get it out in a way that's economically practical.
And that's the issue.
I'm trying to hypothesize. If somebody comes up with a method of mining that would allow you to take it out at virtually zero cost.
Well... I don't have a hypothetical. I don't have a hypothecation for that.
The silver could be put into the market, so it doesn't destroy the value and has a political and economic effect that is beneficial to the population.
Yeah, I don't have an immediate answer for that. I'd have to process through that for a moment.
There's a real good real-life example of the Comstock Lode.
Yes.
Comstock Lode was discovered in the 1890s, and there was so much silver pulled out of that mine that was so cheap to mine that it dropped the price of silver by 90% and bankrupted mining companies all over the world and created a depression that was even worse than the 1930s.
Well, the government's
absolutely had a devastating effect because the law of supply and demand.
The government's going to constantly be involved in the actual manipulation of the metals until we stand up and actually make a difference and say enough is enough. Thank you so much for your call. Thank you so much. Anyway, there are a lot of situations that happen in life that it's total hypothecation, and I couldn't really answer that question. But what I can say is that gold and silver are truly money. They always have been. If you're at all ever considering looking at it, come by, give us a call, talk to us, talk to somebody in the industry. If it isn't us, just talk to somebody about it. Maybe you don't like us, not interested in us or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. To me, it's more important that you just get out there and actually do something. Make sure you've got some gold, some silver, got some cash as well. And that you have the ability to take care of yourself, because the worst feeling in the world is having to, bear all of your stuff on somebody else because you didn't prepare yourself. Get some food storage, folks. Get some water storage. Make sure that you've got family close by, or that you can contact them and be with them, on a regular basis. And, we're getting down to the last few minutes in our show today, and I'm really grateful for the callers today. I really appreciate people getting involved. This is a very emotional issue. Every single time we talk about this kind of thing, it churns up all kinds of issues with folks that have, internally about these kinds of things. And we're dealing with a national debt that will never be paid. We're dealing with, tax revenues that are absolutely ridiculous as far as the federal government's concerned. We're dealing with a government that's really defunct. It's not even operating to your benefit whatsoever. It is not doing anything for your good. When I ask people, when's the last time the federal government did something good for you, or that you felt like you were getting some value, the only thing people can ever tell me is that they feel like the roads make a difference for them as far as traveling and things like that. But they can never tell me any other issue that they're grateful for paying federal income tax for. And I can't really blame them. When I look at it too, I fall into that same category. I can't really say, what I'm feeling really good about with regard to my government or the government. It's certainly not mine. I won't claim it at all. Obama's government, let him have it because he's a part of that creation. We're dealing with a situation in this world right now that has never been seen before. We've got deficits all over the world. We have banks that are literally crashing around us. We have the European Deutsche Bank that's in serious, serious trouble, folks. It is going down any day. It is that serious. And our government is in trouble as well. It's time for us to stand up as citizens and actually make a difference for our own lives. Stop concerning yourself about the government because they're not going to save you. They'll prove to you that every single case. Just look at Katrina or any other serious kind of situation that happens in this country. Folks, I'm really grateful to be here. This is Greg from the Gold Ore Store in St. George, Utah, 435-703-9119. Come by at 7 North Main Street. I'm really grateful to be able to get the opportunity to discuss these kinds of things with you on a regular weekly basis. And you all have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.
You've been listening to Silver Linings with Greg Neal, physical gold and silver expert and wholesale supplier. Join us again soon for another edition of Silver Linings here on Fox News Radio KZNU.